Good afternoon and welcome to the February 24th special meeting of Glendale Successor Agency. May we have the roll call, please?
Agency members: Devine.
Here.
Friedman. Najarian.
Here.
Weaver. Chair Sinanian.
Here. May we have the report, please?
The agenda for the February 24th, 2015 special public meeting of the Successor Agency was posted on Thursday, February 19, 2015 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Thank you. What's the first item on the agenda?
Director of Economic Development regarding revised recognized obligation payment schedule for July through December 2015 ROPS 1516A. 1A is a resolution to revise ROPS 1516A, including administrative budget for same period.
Mr. Ochoa?
Yes, sir. I should probably note, I guess Mr. Weaver is on site already for the upcoming meeting that we'll be having, and Councilmember Friedman is in Sacramento, oddly enough, ironically enough, with the item that is before you here, resolution for your consideration. She's lobbying for ICA and has some also some duties for us. And soon we will have the balance of the council, I'm sure, engaged in this particular issue. What is this issue? We are asking you to amend the recognized obligation payment schedule that you recently adopted on February 10th, 2015. Oh, here comes Mr. Weaver now.
Let the record reflect that Dave Weaver is out here.
The recognized obligation payment schedule was approved earlier this month, and it, as you know, contains all of those items that the Department of Finance allows that we can use and recognize as obligations of the former redevelopment agency and can spend money and or be reimbursed by the state for. One of the things, the reason why we're asking you to amend the ROPS is to add one additional item as it relates to the recent lawsuit that we are hopeful is soon to be concluded. We have a tentative ruling from the court in Sacramento where the city of Glendale has apparently prevailed on the issue of our redevelopment agency loan repayment. As you may recall, in the early days of redevelopment, the city had loaned money to the redevelopment agency at different times under different terms. Under the redevelopment dissolution, those loans were wiped out and eliminated. Under the AB 1484 cleanup language, the resurrection of those loans was held out by the state as a carrot to incentivize agencies and cities to wind up their redevelopment affairs in the interest of getting a certificate of completion and thus be able to collect on those cooperative loans between the cities and their redevelopment agencies. Contained in the statute was the provision that interest on those principal amounts would be calculated according to the local agency investment fund rate, the LAIF rate, and as you know, LAIF rate has fluctuated wildly over the last 30 years. In some cases it was well above 10%. Currently it is at 0.28%. The Department of Finance, in their infinite wisdom, decided that that statutory language meant that when the former redevelopment agency, when the successor agency got its certificate of completion, that was the point at which you would calculate the LAIF rate. Thus, they would take the entire body of the resurrected loan and apply the 0.28% LAIF rate, which is a historic low. We felt that that was patently unfair. It's about a $30 million swing for the city. That is money that would go to the general fund that could be and would be channeled towards any number of important projects for the community, primarily in the area of building replacement, technology infrastructure investment, park refurbishment, all types of different capital as well as some operational expenditures. As I say, we have a tentative ruling that we have won thanks to the good work of our city attorney's office and special counsel, and now what we are asking is that we add our share of those litigation costs, $125,000 that's contained in the staff report, by resolution to this amended ROPS. If you have any specific questions about the ROPS themselves, certainly Elena Bolbolian or Mr. Garcia can address the court case.
We have no questions.
If not, it may be worth noting at this point is that the council will be fully engaged in the change of venue of our struggle. It isn't enough that it appears that we've won in court. The governor and the Department of Finance is now pushing forward a budget trailer bill wherein, if the language moves forward unamended, it would effectively vacate the victory that we apparently have won in court by redefining the lay freight as whatever the lay freight is, or 1%, whichever is greater. So the victory would be effectively rendered into defeat. So we, as you can imagine, are working very diligently to try to amend or defeat that bill as best we can, and certainly will rely on the council's ability to lobby and utilize relationships with members of the Assembly and the State Senate.
And we'll rely on the support of the elected officials, especially the ones from this district, to do what's right for Glendale.
Most definitely, sir.
Question.
Yes, Mr.
So let's
Najarian.
assume the worst and that the trailer bill is drafted and is passed. Is there any legal action then at that point we can take?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, obviously we're still looking at the effects of the legislation without getting too far afield. It does look like certainly the intent of the drafters is to make that particular piece of legislation retroactive, which generally it has the authority to do. And so it would put, whereas we're sort of in the driver's seat at this point, that legislation would put us back at the bottom of the hill to try to fight for our money once again.
Can we take any action which would be in reliance on the court's decision, which would preclude a retroactive changing? In other words, if we made a commitment, I guess the easiest way is to a budget item with this money, or to some other sort of cause, and not fund it through.
We're certainly looking at our options, and that might be one option to look at, but it's a little too early to kind of look at that particular avenue in terms of relief, but we're looking at everything we can to.
Well, I would say, I mean, the most, if we're talking about, because this is as much a political battle as it is a legislative battle, I would recommend that the money that we would be, how much money is at stake then that we're going to be getting immediately?
It's about a $30 million swing over the next several years to be repaid.
Well, then I would say that we commit that to a source that's near and dear to everyone's heart, such as fire services. That we dedicate and earmark that fund to fire services and push that away, so that when the legislature makes a change, that they're taking away our fire services for the city of Glendale. And there's some sort of human touch into that, rather than, oh, it's a budget issue and it's just swallowed up in their $2 million budget type of thing. That's just a thought. I mean, I know that there's a lot of things, but do you see the idea?
Certainly.
Let there be some pushback.
Certainly. I think, when we're engaged in the lobbying process, certainly will be something we'll be putting forth all the services that general fund is used to pay for. And I think, frankly, certainly our legislators are aware of that, and the goal is to get other legislators aware of it too. I would point out that this particular legislation would affect as far as we're aware, 15 other agreements across the state of California between the cities and the agencies, including a city that is in the district of the Speaker of the Assembly. So we're hopeful that that this will hit home with many of the legislators, not just the ones that represent Glendale.
Okay. So,
Is this a receive and file?
it's a resolution.
Resolution 2.
I'll move the item.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Agency members Devine,
Yes.
Friedman, Najarian,
Yes.
Weaver. Aye. Chair Sinanian.
Yes. Next item is adjournment.
Move to adjourn?
Second, thank you. And we're adjourned at 1:12 p.m.